and we're still here. Really good to see everybody. And thanks to Jim for that great video. Terrific. Brings back a lot of memories. Well, when we started, Greyhound workers were on strike. Fred is probably going to mention that, but I just want to say why we did this. There were no other people supporting the Greyhound strikers. It was the first nationwide strike of the Greyhound company. And it was a big strike. And the local that was here was for Montreal, Albany, and New York City. So we had a pretty good array of members who were on strike, and they went between and among the cities as we went along. But the idea was that we just were going to do what I thought unions ought to do, and that is support each other, one way or the other, whether it's a strike or organizing or some kind of problem. So that's what we did, and the unions had not been doing that. I had been a local president for several years before I went to work for Albany, and I had the experience of seeing unions ignoring each other in their times of trouble. So we started the Solidarity Committee to support the Greyhound strikers, and we weren't too popular. I think it was a failure to communicate with probably the orthodox unions. They didn't know what we were doing, although they could see what we were doing anytime. And it only took about 15 or 20 years before the press started saying that we were the Solidarity Committee of the Capital District. Usually they just said, a group calling itself the Solidarity Committee. Well, there we were, and we were still doing it. And eventually, I think the hostility among some of the established and some of the big unions were accepting to a degree of what we were doing, and they started doing it as well, although they didn't give us too much credit for it. In fact, none. But we continued to do it, and some of the unions even gave us places to have a small office. But we were moved around quite a bit, and we had the opportunity to say on a couple of occasions, we've been thrown out of places better than this. So we moved a lot until we moved to the Social Justice Center. But the union support for organizing and strikes was the most important thing, and it still is. But we soon found out that we needed to make common cause with other people and other groups and other movements, and we started supporting indigenous people in Quebec when the Great Whale Project was threatening to destroy their homeland. Places that to the ordinary person out of cities and developed countries is open territory, nobody owns it, so we can do what we want with it. But the Cree in northern Quebec said very clearly, this is not unoccupied territory. We live there. All during the good weather, we live there. Our dead are buried all through the bush. This is our land. And for a long time, we did defeat the Great Whale Project. There were only 3 labor entities in the Northeast that were opposed to this project, because it was supposed to be built for electricity sales to New England and New York. And the only ones of labor that opposed it were the Solidarity Committee utility workers 1-2 in New York City, and the Massachusetts AFL-CIO. So we tried to explain to them and to entities like the building trades and the rest of them. We had a study done, or we adapted a study done by Ian Goodman in Boston that showed that if you buy $1 million worth of electricity from Hydro-Quebec, you create 6 jobs. If you save or create $1 million worth of electricity in New York, you create anywhere between 18 and 24 jobs. But it didn't make any difference. We did not make an inroad there at all. But these are the kinds of things that we were trying to accomplish. And I think, generally speaking, we did, because we defeated it the first time around. But big bucks are very persistent, and they usually come out with what they want. Then the next thing was that we supported the black farmers in the loss of their land all across the South. And I don't exactly remember how we started and who we contacted first, but we ended up eventually doing a tour of black farmers across New York State. And it was a great event, and everybody learned something from the other people who were there. And it was a week-long tour that we did. And we had interviews in all the cities across the state, and we even got in the Boston Globe, even though they had to fudge it a little bit because we were on the New York side of the Vermont border. So we did get a story in the Globe. But these are some of the things that we were doing, like sending a truckload of food and clothes to the copper miners who were on strike against Phelps Dodge in Clifton and Morenci, Arizona. And it was a very, very tough and nasty strike. And if any of you know who Ann Coulter is, her father was the lawyer there at Phelps Dodge. And she was very proud that he broke all 12 unions at PD copper mine. They had made inroads in Greenlee County, where it's located in Arizona. The miners were elected officials of the village, the county, and the rest. And the destruction of those 12 unions caused them to just about vacate the entire area. And we supported them for a period of time. And we raised money to buy turkeys for whoever needed it. We ended up with a pickup truck load of turkeys for Thanksgiving. And these are the kinds of things we did all through. And to a certain extent, the unions have picked it up and are doing similar stuff, but not on the scale that I think we need. Because there's been a war on workers, and that means a war on the unions for 50 years at least, since the end of World War II. And they have won so far. And to fight back, to get back to where we were during that first flush of organizing after World War II, because the unions all said we won't strike during the war. And then right at the end of the war, there was a flush of union organizing and strikes. My father was involved in one of them, and in the leather workers, the Fur and Leather Workers Union, and it was very, very clear what was happening. But they did succeed for a while, but that period of time showed the people who were in power that they needed to curb this, and they decided they were going to do it by keeping the unions down, defeating them in any way they could, and they used everything they had. Legislation, they used the courts, they used everything. And they brought us to the point we're at right now, which is a very tough one, a very difficult one, but I think that probably solidarity is the answer. And it isn't solidarity with your group, it is solidarity with everybody. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things, and I'm going to give you a little anecdote of one of our runs of support for some miners up in Gouverneur. But first of all, let's do some math. We put out the Solidarity Notes newsletter. We put out about 1,500 a month. So say just 1,000 times 12, that's 12,000. Times 10 is 120. It's 240, 360. Another 60, about 400,000, and then all those 500s that we weren't counting before. We put out at least 500,000 copies of the Solidarity Notes. Tabbed them, folded them, mailed them, and we don't even have the statistics on paper cuts. But I see Gary in the back there. He does the printing. Want to stand up? He's a steel worker with PEP. Works for PEP. Has a contract with PEP. PEP prints them. We're very thankful for that. And speaking of the steel workers, John spoke about us supporting the copper miners and the zinc miners. Well, the zinc miners were upstate in Gouverneur, New York, and they went on strike in 85? 85. It was a bitter strike. These miners were unionized. They've been up there for decades. The company was investing worldwide. There's another mine down in Argentina and different places, so the price of zinc went down. It was part of their plan to come back and destroy the miners' union. These miners weren't going to take it. They went on strike. We supported them wholeheartedly. We went up there, Steve Cornell, his wife Kay, Roger LaPlatney, to name a few. It was USWA 3701. John and I drove up there with that truckload of turkeys and stuff. One day went up through Lowville, out towards Utica, up through Lowville. It was snowing a little bit. We kept going. I had a truck, the old truck. It had Armstrong power steering. I don't think I could drive it today. I also was working with Ed Block. I miss Ed. How many people here? I hope he's watching us tonight, because we need a few prayers from him, and I don't pray a lot. But he had a Power Action Coalition of, a lot of people don't even know this. It's not on the internet. It's too long ago. A lot of good movements are on the internet. Weren't documented, weren't put on there. People don't even know they existed. He worked with auto workers and other union workers to create public power bases. So you got public power up in Messina because of the auto workers. We got it in Green Island because of the auto workers. That's why there's a lot of industry in those areas, even still, like where we picketed at Honeywell this year, because they have that public power. And even if they don't get the public power from Green Island, they're able to negotiate a lower rate from the grid because they have some competition. Plattsburgh, city of electricity. The workers who run it are public workers. Public workers have more freedom of speech. They have better pensions, better benefits, better job security. It's a wonderful thing, but they privatize everything. They privatize our earth to extract the zinc, and that's what they were doing up at Gouverneur, not treating the miners very well, talking about how safe it was, and it wasn't safe at all. Steve had silicosis, a lot of miners did. So we went up there, and the secretary of the Power Action Coalition, Jinx Dowd, had one of the few copies of the movie Salt of the Earth. Anybody ever see the movie The Salt of the Earth, the original one? Raise your hands. Yeah. Okay, for those of you who haven't had the opportunity, it's on DVD now. You can get it. It is a beautiful testimony to solidarity. And it's about a zinc mine, Empire Zinc, in Arizona, what was it? New Mexico. A mine mill Smelter Workers Union, very radical CIO outfit, along with UE and Ed's union, right? And they had a bitter strike. They had a two-tier wage system because they had two different workforces. They had the white workforce and they had the brown workforce, the Chicano workforce. And the union stood by all the workers, and they stood particularly with the Chicanos when they were trying to bust the union and pay them starvation wages. They lived in company housing, they didn't have running water. It was miserable conditions for the men who worked really hard, the women and their families. So when they went on a strike, this was a tough strike. There were some battles on the line. It wasn't always pretty. But don't be scared, stop at pickets. Usually there's no violence. You can always leave in time. But there they got an injunction against the men who were the miners. Women weren't in the mines yet. So they couldn't picket anymore. They couldn't stop the scabs from coming across the line. So the women organized a women's auxiliary, right? And they showed up. And this movie is enacted with a few stars who were later blacklisted, and most of the people in the movie were workers. And then the movie was banned, and then it was destroyed. Hence, Jinxed Out had one of the only copies, which I borrowed to take up to the zinc miners with John in the truck with a 16mm projector, right? Which I just donated to the Steamboat Theater, Steamer 10. Maybe they'll use it, you'll see it someday, it's an antique. So we had this film, we went up there, and we got there and found out that, lo and behold, they had some of the similar issues. And the women had formed a women's auxiliary, and they were picketing to help the men. Couldn't always picket, or got second jobs, or were banned because of some scab doing something and them accusing them of something. So they were there in full force. There was so much unity. And I would say just about everybody up there was, you know, light working class. It's like a lot of us. And we watched that film. And let me tell you, there was something called solidarity. Didn't matter. These were brown people. Didn't matter they were women. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, me included, by the end of that film showing. And that put some more steel in their metal bones. And they kept going, and they caught that strike, and the steelworkers supported them for over a decade. Over a decade, they closed the mine down. And they waited another dozen years, and they started it up again about 2 years ago. We put an article in the notes on that. So this was a fundraiser that we held at PEF. It was probably printed in the PEF print shop, and we raised a lot of money for those folks, and really, I think they were grateful, we were grateful, and it's not always, it's nice to win, but it's not always about winning. You know, we move forward in various ways, and we didn't expect everybody we touched to win, we didn't expect everybody we touched to become a full-fledged Solidarity Committee member, but enough people did. I think we made a difference. And Steve actually came down, he got a job at OTB, and when I negotiated a contract with the OTB workers, he was my secret weapon from the North Country. We came down here and picketed in front of the old OTB building in the driving, cold, chilly rainstorm. Right, Larry? You were there? And we did win that one. We got a good contract. But it was a lot of work, but mostly it was solidarity, and that's what counts. Margaret Mead said, we need lots of organizations with about 1,000 people working together, and that'll create a change. We have this one here, and we hold it precious, and we want more people to get involved and write for the newsletter. So that's my solidarity story. There's a lot more, but I think that's an important one. And I'll hand this over to the next decade.
Now, Fred, you're not that much older than me. All right.
The votes feel like they are.
All right. Tom Ellis here. When people ask me what the solidarity, peace, and anti-racist movements in the Capital Region join forces, I think this is correct, but it's not inclusive enough. The Solidarity Committee is among the most democratic, welcoming, and influential small organizations I am aware of. The Solidarity Committee has laid the groundwork for many groups and activities. Our now slightly retired Chairman John Funicello set the tone. He made sure everyone was welcome and invited to participate in a meaningful manner at all of our meetings and events. John continues to edit the newsletter, which gets better with each passing year. And John made sure that the Solidarity Committee did not have a narrow focus. He insists we have a national and international focus, and we advocate for all workers, including black farmers and all farmers and any people of color. The Solidarity Committee lives up to its name. If you attend a Solidarity Committee meeting on the second Thursday of each month at the Social Justice Center, you will get a great education on national, international, regional, and local issues and concerns and how to positively impact on them. The 10 or 20 most active people in Solidarity are among the most competent researchers, activists, and organizers around. We share resources, skills, and information. We are all leaders. Unlike many groups, we have avoided sectarian differences, and most of the members not only work well together, but we enjoy doing it. No challenge is too great for us. We are committed to making the world a better place, not only for organized labor, but everybody, and we are all volunteers. The meetings can be fun too. We joke about Doug Bullock being the boss. In recent years, Doug is often late for meetings due to his growing responsibilities as an Albany County legislator. As you can see, he's
not made it here yet.
He's going to be here though. When he comes through the door, someone will joke, "Oh, the boss is here," and Doug will jokingly say, "Get to work or I'll cut your pay." Each of us has our expertise and skills. Susan is the treasurer and an expert on trade issues and single-payer issues. Fred and Art and John are know more about organizing workers, labor law, labor unions, their leaders past and present, than any people I know, and have been doing labor organizing their whole adult lives. Art takes the lead each year organizing the May Day celebration, always a collaboration with activists outside the Solidarity Committee, and a constantly evolving event. Jim keeps us updated on the United States Post Office, and ongoing efforts that he and others are making to block its privatization. He makes sure that we get the notes in the correct postal trays, the count and labels are correct, so that we can quickly get the notes into the U.S. mail. Tam makes sure that when Solidarity has an event, such as the annual Labor Day picnic or the Martin Luther King celebrations, at which food will be served, that we have enough food, it is of high quality, and enough plates and napkins are on hand. As you can see, Tam did not organize the food for today's event. At these events, we all show up, we know what to do, and we get the job done correctly. Bill Ritchie is probably the best public speaker in our group, although the competition for this title is considerable. It is a pleasure to hear him speak. His passion is as intense as his knowledge of the issues. Larry Whitner is one of the top researchers and writers worldwide on the history of nuclear weapons and how it was the efforts of ordinary people like us who have again and again prevented nuclear war. Fred and Melanie keep us well informed on political events in Mexico and elsewhere in Latin America. They and many others keep the Solidarity Committee connected to immigrants and their activities. John Flanders and others travel to Cuba frequently and report on Cuban politics and economics. John has launched a separate project known as the James Connolly Forum, at which 6 or 7 times a year top labor leaders and writers deliver lectures. Larry and Dorothy managed a film series held at the First Unitarian Universalist Society in Albany, at which great feature and documentary films are shown. Nearly all of these events are free and all are open to the public. Among the major successes of the Solidarity Committee is our newsletter, the Solidarity Notes, published each month and now sent to more than 1,200 people, most of whom live within 100 miles of Albany. Reading any one issue of the notes will allow the reader to grasp the wide scope of our concerns and advocacy work. Amazingly, the notes has been sent out each and every month for 35 years, except for one time when we had a combined issue. Once in 35 years. Yeah. In 1999, the Solidarity Committee began the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Labor Celebration, first held at the Wilburn Temple, later at Toast, and then more recently at the Hackett Middle School. And this event continued for more than 15 years. This labor event, sponsored by dozens of groups and individuals, drew hundreds of people, had a keynote speaker, poster contest, singing and dancing, workshops, and tabling by peace, labor, and justice groups. Unlike so many Martin Luther King holiday events, the labor celebration embraced Dr. King's many legacies in support of economic justice, racial integration, the beloved community, peace, and improving the lives of workers. Hopefully we can resume this celebration. When the Solidarity Committee celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2013, more than 15 labor unions took out advertisements in the event brochure. Several individuals wrote their thoughts on the group. One said, quote, "I feel honored to be a part of the Solidarity family. It is old school union, and it does not get any better than that," end quote. Another wrote, "Your citizen leadership at its finest, carry on the fight for a just, peaceful, humane, and new America," end quote. And finally, I'd like to say that we're halfway through the Trump presidency. I don't think he's going to last 4 years. And we're going to survive him, and we're going to bury everything he stands for.
I'm going to speak from the standpoint of a woman, a mother, and a stepmom in the context of the Solidarity Committee. Because my early experience with the Solidarity Committee really was centered around my family setting. And as a woman in the union movement, when I was working in my first teaching job, I started organizing a union at Albany Head Start, which was, before the period of time we're covering. But so one of the pieces that's important for me to share is that I've always felt like my voice as a woman, as a mom, as a stepmom, has been respected and valued within the context of the Solidarity Committee. For me, Solidarity was sort of all the years been like an extended family. In fact, John and Stephanie are extended family members because when our twins were born, Stephanie helped raise our twins for us. So Solidarity really has an emotional connection for me from that standpoint. We were on picket lines from the time that my stepson Seth was, I don't know, I lost track of time. Yeah, he was on our shoulders, and he must have gone to, I can't count as many picket lines as he was on. And then when our twins came along, well, by then they had twin strollers, so that made it a little bit easier. But we were on picket lines, rallies. We were, whenever there was a need, we all got together, and that's just the culture of this organization, and it's been that way for 35 years. But not only did our children join us on the picket line, the values that came from being part of the Solidarity Committee are ingrown in our family. That sense of caring about other people, that sense of taking risks, even though it may not be something that people respect and understand in our society, because we're seeing our country divided. But I think there are more people that have had that sense of solidarity than there are people that haven't. And I think that's one of the things that's important about our organization. I was talking with one of our twins the other day, and she said she remembered certain things that were really important to her. She remembers the sense of inclusiveness of our organization, that everybody's viewpoint and life experience was valued. And a good example of that happened back in 2005 when her twin sister, who's a musician, got the chance to participate when we were doing an activity from the context of the Worker Center, the hip-hop meets the labor movement with lots of young people. And that was a really important experience for our family. Then, when our twins were little, you guys now may remember seeing some of our friends' children being in the role of selling the 50-50 raffle tickets at the Labor Day picnics. But back, a couple of decades back, our twins were going around to everybody and convincing them they had to buy the 50-50 tickets, and they would not take no for an answer. They also benefited from the experience that was really, really special. It's something we did for a long time at Pyramid Lake. Our Solidarity Committee used to have an annual weekend, or not weekend, but 2 or 3 day experience where all of us would go up to Pyramid Lake, up in the Adirondacks, and it was a mixture of convening with nature, but also, fighting the good fight, struggling on issues, coming to consensus, planning some of the issues we thought we'd do from year to year. We all had to help with preparing the food, so it was really a collective experience and very solidaristic. And, talking with my kids, that was one of their most favorite experiences because they made lots of friends of other Solidarity families. And also, there were other groups that were there when we were there, St. Lucie, St. Helens, which are, a couple of churches that have really social justice-oriented communities. And so everybody was helping each other out and connecting. I guess just to close, my sense is any of you that have ever been part of the Solidarity Committee, and those of you that are new to coming to the Solidarity Committee, will understand that this isn't just about my needs or your needs. It's about all of our needs and how we have to fight together. We have to put down the walls that separate us, and we need to fight together. But that's what Solidarity has always been about, and it's fighting the good fight. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Susan Du Bois, and I was asked to talk about something the Solidarity Committee's done in the more recent years. And I thought a good topic to talk about would be our interaction and our involvement with Occupy Albany. Occupy Albany started as part of the Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Everywhere Under the Sun movement in the fall of 2011. And it initially didn't have much coverage in the press. I first heard about it from an email from somebody, and I got on this live stream where this guy was walking around in Zuccotti Park with a camera and just kind of doing the stream of consciousness narration of what's going on. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. But before too long, an Occupy Albany meeting occurred where people decided they wanted to do one in Albany also. And Occupy Albany turned out to be an immersion course in political organizing, both for the people who were relatively new to it, like some of the college students, and also for people who had been involved in political stuff for decades. It was a very intensive experience because it was, pretty much 24 hours a day for the people who were staying at the park. And there were a lot of us who didn't actually stay in tents at the park, but who were there at, all hours of the day and night, basically. And people just walk up and start talking to each other. And I had some really interesting conversations there with people I'd never met before, never met again, about a host of, political, personal, artistic, and so forth types of things. It was a very intergenerational, intersectional type of experience. And it was also such an intense experience because there were so many, even though Occupy didn't have, demands like the press sort of wanted them to have so they could, write about them in a neat way, there were so many issues going on and so many issues that came together there. And it was also a situation in which, I just ran into things where you got a real sample of a host of things that could go right with political organizing and a host of things that could go wrong with political organizing. And it was a very valuable experience. And I think the Solidarity Committee played a useful role in it in a number of ways. One, by showing up. A lot of us were active in it. But the other thing is that, as others have mentioned here, the Solidarity Committee connects issues and connects movements and so forth. And I think we did a lot of that, sort of in real time there, of connecting some of the younger students with some of the people from the CWA who were having a contract dispute with Verizon at that point, and connecting people who were incensed about some of the things that had gone on with the banks and foreclosures and so forth, with some of the groups that had been doing really technical, down-to-earth stuff about housing issues in Albany for years, and just making those connections, putting people in touch with others so they could talk about common interests and work on things together, and also kind of trying to balance out some of the cultural differences and the ways of talking about things and the ways of doing things. Groups that operated under a lot of pretty strict legal requirements, or groups that operated under Robert's Rules of Order, with groups that were completely anarchist in terms of how they function on a day-to-day basis. One thing that I think the Occupy Albany Occupy movement was particularly valuable for was sort of framing the concept of the 99% and the 1%. And that has carried through in a lot of, it's become a common terminology. There was a controversy going on at the time of Occupy's big activity about the millionaire's tax, which a lot of you probably remember. And there was some picketing of the governor, and people would be going in and out of the Capitol building all the time, doing various demonstrations and so forth. And I was there when Andrew Cuomo got named Governor 1%, and that was by Doug Bullock. People were trying to do a chant about "We are the 99%," which was what a lot of the chants had to do with, and then contrasting that to Andrew Cuomo and his position on the millionaire's tax. And Doug got the cadence right, and he says he's Governor 1%, and that name stuck. So it was, yeah.
Doug's here. Doug's in the house.
Doug arrived, guys. It's on.
Hey, Doug.
You're in Boston.
It's disgusting.
A few other things, just briefly about Occupy Albany, was that I felt that the idea of occupying a park was a tactic. It wasn't a movement. It wasn't the kind of thing that could last for a really long time. And there were a lot of people who were trying to make it last as a very long duration thing, but it didn't turn out that way. And I think it probably couldn't have, even apart from the city of Albany busting it up in a very dramatic fashion. But the amount of creativity and artistic things that came out of Occupy was amazing. After the park occupation broke up, Occupy Albany was briefly in an indoor space, a storefront in Center Square, and then the one on Madison Avenue across from Washington Park that they had for quite a while. And when they packed up to leave the Madison Avenue space, when the lease ran out there, I was involved in I tend to be on the stage crew for things. I was involved in the cleanup for that, and we were unpacking all these posters that people had at rallies and so forth, and then put in the storage room for maybe they'd use them later, but then more posters got put on top, and more posters got put on top. And several people decided this would be good to document, so we took them all out and laid them on the sidewalk, and someone photographed them and gave a copy of the photograph to the State Museum, so that's now archived. But the creativity of the posters was just amazing. And one other piece of artwork that came out of that was somebody got the idea of making these paper cardboard, like 4 foot on the side constructions that looked like a dome tent. And people would carry those around, even when the occupation in the park was no longer there. It was sort of like a virtual, tent city. And those things could be repainted with different slogans for different events. And they had them at a protest about an effort to cut Social Security and Medicare and so forth. It took place in front of Albany Medical Center, and one was painted with a slogan. I think it said, "More nurses, fewer yachts." So, there's a lot of that kind of creativity. But that was the, and then the Solidarity Committee and Occupy Albany collaborated on a very good May Day event in May Day of 2012. which involved lots of teach-ins and a march through Albany, including to the Greyhound station, to various sites that were significant for, primarily actually labor history in the area. So that's the particular event that I wanted to talk about from that time period, and I think
I'm Larry Whitner. Over the past decade, the Solidarity Committee has done a considerable number of things to help foster what I would call a movement culture, one committed to social justice, environmental sustainability, and peace, right here in the Capital District. These things include, of course, publishing solidarity notes, organizing annual Labor Day picnics, and putting together the Solidarity Committee film series, all of which emphasize these themes. But it's important to highlight the Solidarity Committee's unwavering commitment ever since its founding to supporting the rights of workers and their unions. This commitment was underscored by the Solidarity's commitment, crucial support for union workers at the Hilton Albany, who engaged in a spirited boycott campaign against the hotel from September 2017 to January 2018. During contract talks between the hotel's management and the New York Hotels Trades Council, management demanded the complete elimination of the workers' pension plan, rejected the union's request for protection against various forms of discrimination, and proposed clawing back a week of vacation time from senior employees. As the workers could not afford the loss of pay that would accompany a strike, they decided to stay on the job and bring the Hilton Albany to terms by running a boycott campaign, thereby hitting the wealthy owner where it hurt, in his pocketbook. But to encourage hotel guests to boycott the Hilton, there needed to be a loud and vigorous picket line in front of its main doors. And how would that be maintained, especially with the workers engaged in doing their jobs inside the hotel? The Hotel Trades Council sent a small team of its young, lively staff members to sustain the picket line. But they couldn't be there all the time, especially as the weather turned cold, really cold, during December and January. So it was vital to draw on local support to maintain that picket line. Consequently, Solidarity Committee members were out there a good deal of the time, picketing and chanting in the bitter cold and wind, initially with a large truck rented by hotel management, belching exhaust fumes in their faces. This included a regular shift on Friday afternoons, when we comprised most of the picketers. One of our favorite chants was, "Albany is a union town, you can keep the people down." Another one of them, taught to us by union staffers, something like this. No, not that one. Up with the union, yeah, down. Boo, boo, those dirty bosses, boo, boo, those slimy bosses, boo, boo, those greasy bosses, boo, boo, those greedy bosses, boo, boo, and so on. This seemed to be a good way to keep warm and also to lose your voice on the picket line. Another necessity for the Hilton boycott was to maintain the morale of the workers. As the hotel's business declined, management reduced the size of the daily workforce and thereby ended up cutting the workers' income. How many months could workers go on like this, demoralized, or as they began clamoring to call off the struggle and accept a rotten contract. Certainly that prospect was looming. To boost the workers' morale, the Solidarity Committee organized a mass picket line and holiday party for them on December 19th. Held at the Albany Labor Temple, the party was a great success, drawing large numbers of hotel workers, their families with children, and their supporters. It featured free food and drink, music by the Solidarity Singers, a cameo appearance by Santa Claus, who looked remarkably like Fred Pfeiffer, and the distribution of a gift certificate for a free turkey to every hotel worker present at the event. To cover these costs, the Solidarity Committee raised $1,645 from its union contacts and other supporters. Ultimately, this union struggle was victorious. The Hilton management dropped all of its demands for givebacks, and in the ensuing contract, the union secured anti-discrimination provisions, significant wage increases, and improvements in health and other benefits. Not surprisingly, 99% of union members who voted on the contract voted to support it. Additionally, the City of Albany passed legislation compelling hotels to notify their customers of any labor disputes or health hazards, and granting customers the right to cancel their reservations without penalty.
There you go, Doug.
When we stand together, we win. Solidarity forever.
Okay, good job, man. Thank you. I have a request here for the Honorable Doug Bullock to say a word or two.
Go to the mic.
We don't have a bullhorn for you.
Sit here.
Microphone. Just the mic at the table down. Where am I going?
Right here.
And we're going to have a surplus in our county budget. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
But you want to know why?
Go back to the table.
Union busting.
It's disgusting.
Thank you.
Go back to the table.
It's because we have 200 immigrants in the Albany County Jail.
Yeah.
$119 a day for a cell, which winds up to be, over the year into the county, winds up to be almost $1 million a month the county is taking in from the Trump policies. These are folks that were transferred mostly from California at the border and transferred to the Albany County Jail. And they were transferred from some really bad conditions. They were transferred from Walmarts and abandoned factories, abandoned warehouses, and put in cages, essentially, until they came to the Albany County Jail, where we're finally going to give them, in the budget, by the way, we're going to give them legal aid.
Yeah.
We're taking out $100,000 for legal aid for them, and for medical aid. And they're going to need a lot more. They're all, there's been a lot of people seeking asylum. We've got an agreement with the Albany Law School to help these folks out. And, I think it's really important that everybody know the reason why you may be getting a tax break in Albany County is because we have an influx of Trumpism in the Albany County Jail. And believe me, it's Trumpism. Because the caravan coming to the border and the ploy that he used in these elections to try and stop the blue wave was disgusting. And it's still disgusting, him naming people like the people that are trying to seek asylum in this country. It is, and especially the children. Especially separating the children from the families. We've never had a president do that before. We've had a president that believed in the Constitution. Right now we have a president that believes in fascism, that's carrying it out in the White House, giving tax breaks to the rich, and impoverishing everybody else. Filling his bunkers with corporate welfare. Corporate welfare is out of control. And, you know, one of the ways he disperses his immigration policy to Albany County is through the jail. Isn't that nice? Through immigrants, so we can get a tax break. Well, you know, what I say about a tax break, the hell with it. Let's give it all to the immigrants, let's free them, now. It's outrageous. People seeking asylum can't get it for wars that we created in Central America. It's outrageous. You know, so you know, I just want to say, we've been in, the Solidarity Committee has been in some struggles lately. We've been at Mohawk Ambulance. Everybody's familiar with that? With the Mohawk Ambulance, they make $12.31 an hour. $12.31 an hour, won't get it done. That was the main chant. Because, you know, Mohawk Ambulance, the EMTs, they're not even paid the $15 an hour promised to you know, to Amazon employees who are going to come in here and take away jobs. For every one job Amazon creates, you lose 2 jobs in the private sector. So, you know, that's not creating jobs. But, you know, Solidarity's been involved in that, and Solidarity is going to get involved in the demonstrations coming up for single payer. We've been involved for years in single payer health care. There's a demonstration tomorrow in Troy at the Hilton. If anybody wants to come out, please come out at the Hilton on Hoosick Street in Troy. That'll start at noon, and you know, hope to see people there. And then on Friday at 4 p.m. at the Federal Building, we're going to be there again. We're going to have a demonstration on asylum, on folks seeking asylum in Albany County and around the country. And at 4 p.m. we'll have speakers from, you know, the Muslim Solidarity Committee, from all the most of the peace groups. And it's really important to show up. It's important to show up to show the real issues that we face in this country. The real issues are human issues. Human issues are having a humane view about immigration, not a fascist view, a humane view. And that's really important. So come on out and show up tomorrow and Friday, please. Thank you.
Okay, before we wrap up the evening with Blue Character, with a few other songs, are there any other announcements?
I'll just announce that. Thank you to Doug for all his work on the paid sick days. He's been a real champion for us. There's banking unpaid sick days next Monday and Monday after that at the Citizen Action Office. And I think it will be notable to say that we're really struggling to pass this, that the county legislators are going to see fit to do a tax cut, but they can't see fit to allow workers to earn even 5 days a year of paid sick days. There's a problem there. All right. I know it's late. We want to tie up in time. Everybody's got things to go to, so we'll just do 1 or 2 songs here. Any solidarity singers in the house?
Yeah.
Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? All New York workers, good news to you I'll tell, of how the good old union is still alive and well now. Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Don't believe their sayers, don't listen to their lies. We only get ahead because we organize now. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? They say that down in Washington there are no neutrals there. You're either with the workers or with the billionaires now. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? There once was a union man who never was afraid of the goons and the geeks and the company freaks and the deputy sheriffs who paid the rates. She went to the union hall when a meeting it was called, and when the company boys came round, she always stood her ground. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. No, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. That union maid was wise to the tricks of company spies. She never got fooled by the company stool. She always organized the guys. Was got her pay when she struck for higher pay. She showed her card to the National Guard, and this is what she'd say. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Well, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. Workers wanna be free, now take a tip from me. Show your might to the girls who fight and stand together for liberty. Union life ain't hard if you got a union card. Black, white, or brown, we'll stand our ground to run the whole world round. Now you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Now you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. Everybody clap. Now you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Well, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. I had a special request before we go home tonight, so I have to cheat. Maybe anybody else that knows the words, welcome to come up and do them here. So. And that is Solidarity Forever.
Larry Whitner.